Hello and welcome back to another episode of the HRER podcast, where we delve into the world of HR emergencies and scandals. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to HRER on your favourite podcast platform.
Get ready for scandalous stories, lessons learned, and a generous dose of advice for HR professionals for navigating the HR landscape.
Our goal here is not just to entertain, but also to help you learn from the topics we touch on in order to save your business from its own emergency. Our finance director has fallen for a phishing scam and has paid over 50k of company money as a result. Efforts to stop the payment have failed, and it is now in the hands of the police, the bank and IT, as it appears that we have also developed a virus in our computer system since the attack.
This shows that someone actually in quite a senior position fell for one of these scams, and what sort of comes out in the wash with this one is that she was working very hard, she had a lot of pressure at home, she wasn't necessarily herself. We need to be red hot on this kind of thing. The technology is moving very, very fast, and it is really important that we do engage with training on this sort of thing rather than rolling our eyes when we go, GDPR and type cybersecurity training again. You know, it's this sort of thing can bring a company down.
Episode 12 of the HRER podcast. That was a very formal introduction, I appreciate, but we are here to discuss serious formal topics.
12? I mean, it only feels like we did 10, an hour and a half ago?
No,
we did.
I've stopped getting like nervous for him. The night before I'd be like, oh, is it going to be all right? Yeah. But now it's just, we sort of turn up and do our thing.
I feel like we're in the swing of it. I mean, what's that stat? You love your stats.
Yeah, the 21 podcast.
Is that how many we've got to get to? 21?
Yeah, to be in the top percentile of podcasts ever. Okay.
But, we're top 25 anyway.
We're top 25 in the UK, and we're coming for that top 10.
Yeah.
You better believe it. But episode 12, nevertheless.
What are we talking about today, Ollie?
Today's title on the document is clicking a phishing email that costs the company 50 grand gross negligence.
Sounds like it could be quite serious.
It sounds serious, and I hope by the end of it we'll have an answer to that question. So, hi Alyssa, urgent one today, could really use your advice. Put simply, our finance director has fallen for a phishing scam and has paid over 50k of company money as a result. She received an email supposedly from our accountants noting that the company had underpaid on its VAT bill, and it provided a link for payment. Remarkably, she followed the link and made the payment, struggling to speak here. It was the end of the working day. After doing the payment, she then packed up and drove home and said her stomach dropped on the way home, and she rang the accountants to verify what she had done. To her horror, they confirmed that they had not emailed about any VAT and the company was up to date. She immediately realised what had happened and informed the CEO. Efforts to stop the payment have failed, and it is now in the hands of the police, the bank and IT, as it appears that we have also developed a virus in our computer system since the attack. I have seen the email, and had she clicked on the email address, she would have seen it wasn't from the accountants, the grammar wasn't correct, and the language was slightly strange. They didn't refer to her by name when they are usually quite casual with us. She has been with the company for a long time. What do we do?
So, as always, this is a situation that actually happened. Mm-hmm. And this is mega, 50 grand walking out the door.
It's a lot of money
in one go.
Yeah.
And, it's not, so when we talk about conduct and misconduct issues, we usually think about someone who has intentionally had some poor behaviour.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, the FD was, she was mortified. It was, in her view, inadvertent what had happened. She hadn't intentionally set out that day to cause a 50 grand loss with the business.
That, are they really?
So it's, following this, she didn't sleep. She was very upset. I believe she was actually signed off sick. She was really struggling emotionally following this because,
stressed.
She's the finance director.
Yeah.
This isn't sort of a junior payroll person or, accounts assistant. From
the sounds of it, she's quite experienced.
The buck stops with her.
Yeah.
So you've got a measure of sympathy with somebody with something like this, which can actually make disciplinary proceedings quite difficult because you might like the person, they might be very valuable to the company. But actually what we have to look at here is, should someone in her position have known better? And this is when we're getting into that gross negligence territory rather than, gross misconduct. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's still serious enough that potentially we can dismiss somebody in these sorts of circumstances. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail. Mm-hmm. But what I would say we're looking at here is a typical example of gross negligence.
Okay. Yeah, it's crazy. She's been, I mean, how long roughly had she been with the company for?
20 years.
So she's got mad experience as an FD.
Yeah.
She probably was like maybe doing the phishing training herself with IT. Like,
So she wasn't delivering the training, but this company did provide GDPR and IT security training, which, you know, we all have to sit through it. It's one of those when the email link comes, say you've got this training to do, that everyone kind of has a bit of an eye roll and says, oh, you know, I know you don't click on suspicious things. We don't,
no.
you know, but this shows that someone actually in quite a senior position fell for one of these scams. And what sort of comes out in the wash with this one is that she was working very hard. She had a lot of pressure at home. She wasn't necessarily herself.
Okay.
And perhaps wasn't as thorough as she normally would have done, or
She
didn't
slipped,
do the typical
arguably.
checks.
She slipped.
She slipped.
It's a 50 grand slip, but she slipped.
Yeah. And it was, in some respects, the checks on this would have been basic. So when we talk about training on IT security and we talk about phishing scams, you know, one of the first things we do is, well, okay, the email might say your accountants, but when you click on it, does it say something totally different behind what it's actually showing you? And, you know, in the training, we talk about things like, is the language slightly different? Is it an unusual request? And where large sums of money are being demanded, that should be a red flag. So we verify this sort of thing. I know, you know, if our company got a £50,000 VAT demand, I'd be ringing the accountants going, pardon? You know, what's gone wrong here?
Straight to source.
You know, I wouldn't necessarily just be paying it. I'd be saying, well, can we check? Can we check again? Can we ring HMRC and make sure that, you know, that this isn't some sort of mistake? I wouldn't just be clicking and making the payment.
I'm not saying it's like justified, but from her point of view, she was like stressing under a lot of things. She probably just thought, I want this out of the way.
And to some extent, you know, that there's mitigation in there, that she was struggling with things in her private life. Her workload was very high. She was working long hours. And that can be taken into account and should be taken into account in a disciplinary process. So where you've got someone accused of even the most serious behaviour, if they present mitigation as part of a reasonable process, you consider the mitigation and whether it offsets things to any extent at all, and whether you can either reduce a sanction because of it or actually whether it excuses it entirely. This is very serious. You know, there's a lot of money at stake. She's a very senior individual. She was very, very experienced. So whilst yes, there was mitigation in this situation, it wasn't enough to ultimately save her employment.
Okay. Understandable, to be fair. I mean, we've had, I personally, while doing this job, I've had a few people call me up and say, your company's emailing me, I want them to stop. And it ain't been us. It's been some Daniel Rodriguez guy from Mexico.
And you've had emails off me, but they're not from me.
They're not from you, yeah.
But we know, we check the email address, we delete, report, you know, there's things that you do that are the most basic level. Yeah. So if there's something that's an unusual request, you ring up the person and check. So independent verification. And, you know, this is something that these scam artists are actually cottoning on to as well. Because we had an email that came round from people who support us with the business to say that there is an AI voice scam going around. So you get the email that says, wow, you need to pay some money or whatever, or someone requesting something. It may not even be money. It might just be to start a dialogue so you believe it is that person. You ring up and check, and there is a hack that then goes on where they are replicating people's voices. So it's got that sophisticated in terms of these scams. We definitely don't need that. So independent verification is absolutely crucial. And at a senior level, you know, it can come down to how well do you know somebody. So in this one, it was very clear that the language was different. So the FD has a very close relationship with that accountancy company. They would normally start their emails with like, hi, you know, how are you doing today? A couple of things to update you on. This one was like, Dear Jenny.
Very formal.
Very formal. The English wasn't brilliant. Some of the spellings were off. The punctuation was wrong. And there was very much a difference between casual emails where perhaps there's kind of a bit of a casual disregard to grammar compared to something that was very obviously...
They're missing words out. Yeah.
I appreciate that she was extremely tired. She was under a lot of work pressure, but what the decision that they came to at the disciplinary meeting was at a fundamental level.
Negligence.
Had she been half asleep and, you know, off her head on migraine tablets and, you know, with a foggy head, you would still kind of go, really?
Not right, that.
Something not quite right about this.
No. You can see it a mile off, can't you? Like I personal emails, you get God knows how many in your junk, like, I'm trying to think of examples.
Well, the ones that make me laugh are the people who engage with them for clicks.
Okay, yeah.
And where
yeah,
you
yeah.
see them and they come out on social media and it'll be someone who says, oh, I need you to send me £1,000 so I can send you 10 million because my grandmother's died and I can't pay it into the UK.
Mhm.
And the people who then respond and go, okay. And they'll get a dialogue just for laughs.
Yeah.
And some of the content's very, very funny. And I would say from a certain level, obviously, providing you're not granting them by entering into that dialogue any access to any, IT infrastructure, it's an entertaining way of dealing with it. Personally, I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever heard me on the phone when I get a spam call. It's, how did you get my number? Thank you very much for informing me. Take me off your list. Phone goes down. And I am polite. I don't shout at people. I'm not offensive. It's, well, thank you for the call. How did you get my number? Oh, I bought your data from X. Well, great. Take me off your list, please. Thank you very much for the call. Phone goes down.
This is mad tangent, but there's a really not strange, but like there's a thesis that like these scammers do it for a job, but some of them are made to do it. Because they're like cyber slaves, if you like.
Yeah, so like organised crime, where you've got people who are kind of caught up in that potentially, yes. But they do, the money that's changing hands on these sorts of things, it is a risk for organised crime.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just from, company security point of view, but an ethical reason. This money can end up in the hands of terrorism or, particularly where there's tension with foreign powers that, we're more at risk in terms of cyber hacks from other parts of the world. We need to be red hot on this kind of thing. The technology is moving very, very fast, and it is really important that we do engage with training on this sort of thing rather than rolling our eyes when we go, GDPR and type cybersecurity training again. It's this sort of thing can bring a company down, but actually what we have to look at here is, should someone in her position have known better?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a relative who worked for a German company, a very, very large company. They had a cyber hack and they couldn't pay anyone. It took their payroll down.
Oh,
so
geez.
their entire workforce, I think they had 10,000 people working for them across Europe. They were in breach of contract with 10,000 people because they couldn't pay them. They had 3 people in HR who were trying to process payments manually. And in the end, it took the business under.
Jesus. Well, they couldn't turn around the payroll quick enough.
They couldn't get to grips with the crisis fast enough, and they didn't have any resilience measures in place, and they went under as a result.
Oh my goodness me. Very serious then. Let's start with the questions from an employer perspective. 83% of UK businesses that face a cyber attack in 2023 have stated it was from a phishing email. With AI getting more sophisticated and making it harder to spot scam emails, are you seeing scams more? And what types are becoming more common? Immediately, the voice over AI thing is crazy.
So that seems to be the newest kind of high-tech thing that I've become aware of. I'm sure there's more sophisticated stuff either yet to come or that is happening that we're not aware of. I think whilst we're seeing more and more of these emails, I think people are getting very good at going, I've spotted that. And also spam filters are very good at picking them up as well. And, the attention to detail with them. So like when you've had emails from me that have not been from me, the fact that they have my name is spelt correctly. It's not one of the most common names. That would suggest that some attention to detail has gone into that level of scam. So either the AI that's being used or the people that are doing this aren't necessarily unintelligent people. They're very, very, very smart criminals. Criminals is what they are at the end of the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
But so it's really, really important that we're training our staff, we're making them aware that if an email is going around or it looks like there is any exposure, that we are telling people, delete things, do not open this, check if you are not sure and look at other ways that you can verify. So if you're in a building with someone, go over to the desk and talk to them. Pick up the phone. If we're worried that perhaps it might not be who we think it is on the phone, can we use things like Teams or Zoom or something like that, so that we've got so many ways of communicating
Actual
these days.
Face-to-face, yeah.
Yeah, let's look at some much safer ways of verifying things.
I mean, have you seen any of these like AI generated images?
Yes.
In general?
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Some of them are hilarious. The ones where they get it like really, really wrong.
Yeah.
Are just Can
you tell though? So I can tell. I can kind of tell when it's AI generated.
So the ones where they get them really, really wrong.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, yes, that looks like a child to put that together on a computer.
Yeah.
But then the ones that are supposed to be real people, I think, they do give, and it's a bit like when you ask ChatGPT to write something. It's got the voice, hasn't it? It's the way it reads, the way it feels. You can kind of go, well, I think this might be ChatGPT.
It's a style.
It's the same with the images, I think.
Yeah.
You kind of get that feel.
AI just pops into my head.
I tell you what, though, there was an occasion where I wasn't sure if I was looking at AI or something for real. and this isn't a plug, but do go see it if you can. Like endorsements, welcome. I went to see the ABBA, the hologram.
Okay, yeah.
And it was mind-blowing. So we were advised on where to stand for like kind of the best view.
Mm-hmm.
And when they walk out onto the stage, your head can't wrap around the fact that you're looking at a hologram. These look like real people. And I was expecting like an 80s hologram where they'd fizz a little bit or the edges would be a bit,
fuzzy.
But because because you've been told these people are now in their 60s and on stage they're in their 20s, we all know these people have aged. So we know it's not real.
Yeah.
And then there were various supporting acts with it. So there was an orchestra, there was a band, and then some backing singers. And me and my husband and I, saying, are they here?
Are they holograms as well or no?
And we couldn't work it out.
Was it clarified ever? Or
we were asking other people who were around us. And I think afterwards said, no, they were real.
But you couldn't tell the difference?
But we couldn't tell the difference. And it messes with your head. The technology is at the point where I was stood in an arena and this was maybe 150, not even that, say 100 yards in front of me, and I couldn't work out if what I was looking at
reality.
Was real or not.
Yeah, you're literally questioning reality.
Yeah.
That's how far we've come with technology, people.
So it is, the tech is there. So yes, I think when you look at AI generated images, it has the look. The exception I would say is when I went to see the ABBA show.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, tangent, but there we go.
That's a good tangent though.
Yeah.
I like it.
Go see it. It's fantastic. Even if you're not into ABBA, fantastic. Really, really good.
Noted.
Yeah.
Second question, as an employer, what is classed as gross negligence in the context of company cyber fraud? Does this employee's job as a financial advisor affect his or her responsibility?
So in this situation where you've got somebody who has been so negligent in what they've done, there's almost no excuse for it.
No.
So this person, finance director of 20 years service, would do biannual training, would advise people within the business on financial phishing scams. There really, really was no excuse for this person to have paid over that kind of money. So that is where we are in the kind of gross negligence sort of realm. So she's not done it on purpose. She's not robbing the company. She's not in league with the criminals. Well, I hope that would have been a twist. As far as I'm aware, she wasn't in league with the criminals. She was just so very, very poor in her judgment on that day that it can't be justified.
Just on one case as well.
Just one email, it wasn't even one click because she put the company card details in to pay it.
Yeah.
So there's a few clicks going on there, which at any point you've got the ability to kind of come back and, the bank sends you the message, say, here's your code, verify that you know what you're doing, and click, click, click. There's lots of stages where she could have recovered this before she got in the car. So we really are then in this territory of gross negligence. And
I was just starting to feel sorry for her then.
Yeah, but then when you think about when you go online and buy a T-shirt, there's still how many steps between
you got to do like PayPal
you deciding that you're doing
yeah.
something and the transaction completing. Even if it's only something that costs $5, you've still got all these steps to go through.
For $5, I'm checking Trustpilot reviews. I am tight. I am tight.
So, exactly. So it's what a reasonable person does these days in terms of checks when it comes to paying out money. And this was 50 grand.
Don't click hyperlinks in emails.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Things. So yeah, when we're talking about this level of gross negligence, then yeah, absolutely. We're looking at very serious disciplinary allegations. And say with this one, it cost her employment.
Jeez. Third question. In the event of an employee's negligence leading to financial loss for the company, what legal responsibilities does the HR department bear?
So,
if any.
The HR responsibility, one, to get to the bottom of it. Two, that advise the company on process, procedure. In this situation, liaising with the police as well, so being that kind of central point of liaison. Now, in this situation as well, and you've said that you already have some sympathy with this person, you're probably going to feel even more sympathy, was the company pursued her personally for the money.
Oh.
Because they said, in terms of her contract of employment, there was a standard expected of her and she breached it because she was so grossly negligent in her duties, and her breach of contract cost the company 50 grand. So would it have been different,
for example, if it was like a admin assistant?
Likely, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, but the chances are that you wouldn't have someone with the authority to pay over that kind of money.
In that position.
In that sort of position.
Okay.
But they said because this was so sort of bad in terms of
It's poor, isn't it?
judgment and what was expected of someone in that position, that they said she was personally responsible for the losses. Now, I'm not a civil litigator, so I don't know how far that went, whether it settled, whether they pursued it to the end. But the last I heard was that they were looking at legal action against her to recover the money.
It's a mad amount of money in it as well, just for one person to fork
Because
out.
I don't believe, because it was so obvious, the insurance didn't pay out.
The company insurance didn't pay the company the money.
So when they looked at the email and they said no, a admin junior would have known that was a phishing scam, and they said because it was so obvious, the insurance company wouldn't cover.
I can't blame them, to be fair. I can't. Moving swiftly on, question 4, the final one from an employer. Cybercrime costs the UK up to £4.6 billion annually. Are there insurance policies or risk management strategies HR can put in place to mitigate the financial impact of cyber fraud? Immediately, like GDPR training.
Yeah. So you can get cyber insurance. And these days it's becoming, basically, if you are operating online or interacting with members of the public, it's an essential because, we don't know people are necessarily who they say they are.
Is that like the ISO accreditation stuff?
I think it's separate, but so you can get a separate insurance policy.
Okay.
So in the same way that you would have flood, fire, employee insurance, employer's liability insurance, that you can have, like the same way that you insure your car, you can insure your business against cyber attacks. In terms of, the cost and level of those, it depends on the complexity of your business and level of exposure. Those insurance policies may well then dictate a level of training that they expect the business to follow to reduce their risk. So like with your car insurance, you are expected to wear your seatbelt. You're expected not to speed. You are expected to limit your mileage per year. If you have a policy that only covers you for commuting, you're only supposed to commute. All these things are to limit the risk to the insurance company that they're going to have to pay out. It's the same with your cyber insurance. They may well specify conditions that you have to follow in terms of maybe doing your ISO accreditation, training your staff members, multi-factor authentication. So looking at the varying different ways that you can secure your company information. That could be a ban on the use of personal devices, so that the company has ultimate sort of parent control over the devices. They can shut them down, they can wipe them, they can lock them, all these sorts of things to make sure that we're keeping our risk low.
So policies dictate process from the cybersecurity level down. Yeah. Fantastic. Questions to ask as an employee now. I've got 3 of these. What steps can employees take to verify the legitimacy of emails and avoid falling victim to phishing, spam, scams? I feel like this is common sense, but...
It should be common sense. Verifying where something's come from. So we do the basic, we click the email to see where it's come from. I understand that there is tech in play that can even mask that to make it look like it's where someone's actual email
I've got
is
text
hacked.
from O2 UK.
Yeah. And there's
actual.
And that by clicking on it, you can't actually verify beyond that.
No.
It could be then that you ring I had it. My mortgage company sent me an email asking me to ring a certain number to speak to somebody. I didn't. I went on the website and I rang the main line and I asked to be put through to someone. The email wasn't from the mortgage company.
Oh.
And all the branding was correct. The email address looked correct, but the phone number wasn't the same as what was on the website. So it meant I had to sit in a queue for 20 minutes while I waited to be connected, and it was annoying. But by using their main phone number and then asking to be connected by name to somebody that I knew, it revealed it for what it was.
And that takes, like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
To save
Yeah. And I've
money.
spoken to people where they've had the same thing with the police. So where they'll either have had, say, for example, they have been subject to a robbery and they are in email communication with the police. Some people get surprised by this, that the police email you. So if you are engaged in, say a crime's been reported and either you're a witness or it's you who's the victim, then they don't just turn up at your house anymore and take their hats off and ask for a cup of tea. They'll email you.
Yeah. Not stuck in past, are they?
Yeah. So again, they'd received an email. So rather than either replying to that, because they said it just didn't seem quite right, they rang the police station. I know it wasn't.
It's better to be safe than sorry, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's always better to check, particularly where anybody is asking you for personal information or asking for money. And it could be where you think, they're only asking for the last 3 digits of my card. I'm not giving my whole card away. You don't know what somebody can do with that.
That's vital information.
Exactly. Yeah. So any information, even if it feels quite innocuous or what they actually do with this, but quite a lot is the answer. So always check, never give details out without verifying who you're speaking to.
And be suspicious.
Yeah, it's horrible, but we need to be.
Be really suspicious. Even I went to see my granddad a few weeks ago and he's like, oh, someone's ringing me asking for you. I'm like, play me the voicemail. played me. I was like, Grandad, I don't know who they are. Like,
Yeah.
if they ring you again, tell them to get gone. So if you've been ringing Ron Robinson, I'll find you. Question two.
You've just given out somebody's name on a podcast.
There's loads of them. My surname's common as muck, innit? If you can find him. Second question as an employee. Should work be giving me training on how to avoid phishing and scam emails?
So work should be doing. However, if they haven't, this is the kind of thing you can school yourself up on. There's so much out there in terms of resources and, knowledge on the internet, and it's free. You can go on YouTube and, you can really go down a rabbit hole, but you've got some real kind of tech wizards on YouTube who are uncovering these scams and explaining them and explaining the AI. So if you do have an interest in it fundamentally, then there's loads of stuff out there, but you can educate yourself on it. So, and it's not just you say, well, look, if the employer doesn't educate me on it, then it's their risk. Remember, this can affect you personally. Your bank account could be hacked. Your medical records could be hacked. Your identity could be stolen. I had a family member who had their pension stolen. So there was identity fraud where someone reapplied for their driver's license. They took it into a solicitor's office and got it verified as true form of ID. It was submitted to the pension company and they drew down a pension. The solicitor was struck off. The person who did it was actually caught and they went to prison for a long time.
Oh, God.
And the pension company, thankfully, the insurance did cover it and it covered the court costs and the payout. But it's really serious. That's not just a work thing.
No.
So I wouldn't take a blasé approach to this and say, well, it's the employer's loss if they don't train me on it. I think these days, we all need to be schooled up on these scams because it can hit you personally and it can hit your family members personally as well.
I would agree. Like, you see, every now and again, you'll open the newspaper if you still read paper newspapers, and you'll see, like, in my town, certainly someone's gone to prison for scamming, like, an older person.
Yeah.
Like, because they're classed as the most vulnerable. But yeah, definitely training's important as well. Last question as an employee. Why should employees have to pay back money that's not even theirs? What rights do they have in this situation? So you mentioned she had to pay this back. We don't know if she did, but she was...
We don't know if she did, but the employer wanted her to be accountable for this. So where somebody has done something that is so negligent in their duties that it could be classed as breach of contract, then because of your breach of contract, if you've caused your employer a financial loss, you could potentially be sued personally for it. I would say it's not always a course of action that employers will take. Sometimes individuals aren't worth suing. It can be very difficult to get the money back if they haven't got any property or any value or any money to pay you. Well, you're going to end up paying out on your court costs. It's a long time in court. It kind of prolongs the pain. If the insurance covers it, then it's kind of why you pay your insurance. But where you're in a situation such as this, where you've got such a level of gross negligence and such a level of personal responsibility, company will sometimes feel obligated to do what they can to try and recover the money.
And for the record, I think rightfully so, personally.
Yeah,
I think fair enough.
It was a sad situation.
Yeah,
it really was,
isn't it?
But at the same time, she should have known better.
Yeah, in like her experience and in her role anyway, definitely. Lessons learned. The UK was the second most targeted country in the world for cyber attacks after the US. We're flattered, aren't we?
I think so. I mean,
you mentioned this to me last week, didn't you?
I think, we're quite a small country.
Little old us.
Yeah. And I suppose coming back to the last podcast where we talk about our underperformance in the G7, well, people want to hack us. We can't be doing that.
We
badly.
must have a bit of dough.
Yeah.
But there's a question here. I digress. Emergency measures that HR departments can take to prevent their business being scammed in future. What are they?
We get out in front of this. When we are onboarding people, one of the first things we should be doing with new employees is making sure they are up to date on what we expect from a cyber security perspective. So multi-factor authentication, yes, it can be a pain when you're trying to sign into something again and again and again and you're having to authenticate things, but it's crucial for company security.
It's like 5 seconds on your day,
yeah,
isn't it?
So it really should be top of the list in terms of your onboarding. Reviewing the policies, this tech is moving so quickly. I would say rather than sort of like your once a year review, this is probably something you should be looking at once a quarter. Looking in the press, looking online, seeing what the latest scams are and emailing the staff to say, look, here's the policy, but here's some of the latest scams that you should be aware of so that we're constantly upskilling people about this. It's
scams as well, like they're naturally scandalous. So I quite like talking about them. Yeah. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
It's quite appealing to discuss and like...
It is, because it's...
Consider.
They're clever.
Yeah, they are.
These
it's
are
admirable
highly intelligent people.
Yeah.
And it's where, that when you read in the press and various experts in their fields talking about this, saying, look, this is the future of crime. You know, the future of warfare potentially is going to be fought out in cyber warfare. Terrorism. You know, it's when in the earlier days in the troubles in the Middle East, and you'd hear about teenagers being groomed online and going out to these places for varying reasons. These are people who are using the internet and using people's personal information to convince them to do something. So this isn't necessarily anything new, but it's evolving in some really, really sinister ways. And it's something that, you know, we're going to have to be educating our children on, that as soon as someone gives a device to a child, they should be explaining, look, we don't click on things that we don't understand or that we don't know about. And you hear about it on Facebook and TikTok all the time, and people kind of laugh about it when there's like a 6-year-old who's cost someone $6,000 because they keep clicking on purchasing things that are brightly coloured, and, you know, they think they're playing a game.
Don't give them an iPad.
But I certainly don't save your card details to it.
Come on.
But it happens.
That is negligence, isn't it?
Yeah, but, you know, it happens. I don't know enough about the games kids play, but where they can buy credits or, you know,
coins.
You can tell I don't play these games.
Yeah,
but,
you can.
Yeah, I'm a fish out of water here. But, you know, it happens. And I've heard my friends telling their children, or stop buying things on the iPad.
You're racking up bills.
You know, my mother was saying that to me when I was 22, but whatever. You know, it's a different kind of
we
buying.
all mature at different rates.
Yes. But no, it's something that it's going to become part of life. It's not just a workplace thing.
I'd argue that it already is.
Yeah.
I definitely would. Closing thoughts. So key themes. What happened, and if we can get your personal perspective on it, that's not a stretch.
Yeah. So the individual lost her job. I would say it was justified. You know, it wasn't reasonable really in the circumstances for her to have fallen for this. I don't know how far or whether the company recovered the money. That kind of becomes out of my remit once I've advised on that bit. But what I would say is that it's in everybody's interests, rather whether it's in or outside of work, to school up.
Yeah.
What are the latest scams? Because it could be that you've got an elderly relative who's vulnerable, who doesn't have, you know, the knowledge when it comes to tech, who perhaps has been given a tablet or an iPad or something so that they can just, you know, FaceTime with family members that could fall for these sorts of scams. So it's really, really important, not just for us, but for also to protect the people that we love.
Definitely. That's it. Episode 12 completed. Until next time, anything else you want to add? I'm quite. I think
we've rattled through a fair bit then. But thank you very much, and thank you everybody for listening, watching. We're really, really thrilled with the feedback that we're getting, and the amount of you that are watching and continuing to watch as well. So thank you so much. And if there's anything that's really pressing you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to reach out on our website or on our social media at HRoes.
Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Until next time, we're your hosts signing off from HRER. Take care of your HR and may your workplace be disaster-free. Before we go, a big thank you to you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe. If you have your own ER stories or suggestions for future episodes, reach out to us at HRoes or on social media, or even HRER@HRoes.co.uk. As we navigate the maze of workplace blunders, remember that no organisation is perfect, but by sharing these stories, we can all work towards creating healthier, happier, and more productive workplaces.